Our next guest is an author, speaker, and corporate trainer here in Winnipeg.
So I was at Starbucks one day, and this lady comes up to me, and she's crying, and she says, "Why did you do that?" And I was like, But then I remembered while I was getting my coffee, I gave the barista a bunch of money to buy coffee for all the people behind me. She was one of my lucky recipients. And here she was, all choked up, saying, "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." It kind of caught me off guard. I've bought coffee for people for years. For me, it's just a fun way to spread kindness and make people happy. I'd never thought anything of it until the day I had a hole drilled in my head. 2018, I go to the doctor for this thing on my head, and he says, "Oh, yeah, it's just a wart. It's no big deal. Come back on Friday. We'll snip it out 10 minutes. Easy peasy." So Friday came, and I took the bus down because it was no big deal. I hopped up on the table, and things went south in a very big way. Not only did I feel every single cut the guy took, halfway through he starts shouting, "This is way bigger than I thought. That is a lot of blood," which didn't really inspire confidence. And then he let the bomb drop, the C word. I think it's cancer.
Her debut memoir, High Power Betty, chronicles the story of how she healed from the trauma of being bullied as a child, losing her father to dementia, while supporting an unsheltered man in Winnipeg named Leroy Adams. We welcome to the studio for the first time Jody Zarn. Good morning, Jody.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and we appreciate your story and all the different layers of your life story. First of all, let's begin with, when did you start paying for other people's coffee? What inspired that?
Well, I grew up, with coffee in our life. I grew up in southwestern Manitoba in Cromer, and out there, it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. At 10:30, life shuts down, and you head to the nearest cafe, and you have coffee there. There's a little cafe out in Cromer, and we grew up just having coffee and buying people's coffee and fighting over who could pay for somebody else's coffee. And that's where the love grew. And then, in 2018, I guess I had the skin cancer on my head, and that took off. I decided that initially I didn't want to tell people that I had skin cancer. I'm a very private person. And I thought, well.
Clearly, as you address thousands with your story, you're a very private person.
yeah, that ship has sailed, definitely. That ship has sailed. And I thought, well, I hate people like feeling sorry for me. I hate like the hashtag hugs and prayers and stuff like that. And I thought, well, there's no way I can hide getting a big rectangle taken out of my head. So I'll deflect, and I will get people thinking about doing something good for other people, buying people coffee. So we called it Coffee Verzarno. And I thought maybe 15 people would do it. I thought my mom would do it and my sister, and that would be about it. But it took off like crazy. We had over 800 coffees and treats purchased all over Canada, the US, and the UK. And it was bananas. And we had people emailing me, telling me like how it made their life better, because they might have woken up that day feeling kind of blue, but when they had the chance to go and do something good for a stranger and see the reaction, then it really lifted their spirits, and it really took off. After that, we became hooked on helping people.
So we referenced that you were bullied as a child. Why were you bullied as a kid?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know I look like I'm 25, but I'm a little bit older than 25. And back in the day, in I don't know, like in our community, it was just normalized, kids being kids having fun. And I grew up in a very sports-oriented community, a very big hockey town, and no shade to that. Sports are fantastic. But I was the little weirdo that didn't fit in, and I was shy and timid and probably didn't have a lot of self-confidence. So I made a really easy target. And at that time, I don't know that people realized that, having a bit of fun at somebody else's expense was bad, because it was just fun, right? Suck it up, quit whining, and it's okay. So that's kind of the story of my life. And so when I wrote Higher Power Betty, I really had to dive into why I wanted to help Leroy. And part of that stemmed from the fact that I needed to help other people because as a kid I needed help and I needed somebody to stand up for me.
And I'm guessing you didn't really ultimately get that. Somebody to stand up for you. And so, or did that ultimately happen for you?
Well, you know what? Like, I mean, nobody did save me from the bullying. And it got to a pretty bad spot. I was self-harming and I was considering taking my life. And that's where Higher Power Betty comes in. And Higher Power Betty can be anything to anybody. And for me, she's that little voice in your belly that says, you know, you got to stick around. You got a job to do here. Don't quit. Don't give up. And there was one day on the playground when I was at my all-time low. I was very close to taking my life. And I was standing out in the sun, and I just had this little voice in my head, or this little voice that said, "You're here for a reason."
Wow.
Yeah, and I never looked back, and I stuck around, and it's been good.
Before we ask you about Leroy, you're cancer-free?
Yes. Yeah, it's great. They
Wonderful.
told me not to come back.
So let's talk about Leroy Adams. Who was Leroy?
So Leroy Adams was a gentleman. He grew up in Barbados. He was born in Guyana, and he came to Canada when he was about 25. And he spent the last 15 years of his life in Winnipeg being homeless to some degree, like chronically homeless or completely homeless. And by the time I met him, he was just about completely blind. And how he survived on the streets of Winnipeg is beyond me. Like even coming down in the snow today, like I don't know how he did it.
What year was this? When did you meet Leroy?
I met him in the fall of 2021. So I work at City Place in the offices there. And again, by that point, that was a year after I had the Coffee for Zarno cancer experience. And I was just obsessed with buying people coffee. We still are. We still do it. And there were two gentlemen standing in the lobby of City Place, and one on either side. And I thought, you know what? It's the first cold day. Neither one of them had winter coats on. They looked cold, and so I thought, I'm going to get them a coffee and a muffin. And, you know, I had no idea. I had no idea where that moment would take me. So yeah. And Leroy, like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with The Queen's Gambit on Netflix.
Yeah. Excellent show.
Yeah, so Leroy is Winnipeg's Queen's Gambit. He was the very best checkers player in Canada, the third best in Barbados, and the 12th best in the world, and wildly intelligent. And you know, that really taught me that you don't know what somebody's story is when you're driving past them on the street, or if you look at somebody in a bus shelter. We make all these assumptions about people, but he came from a very good middle class life. He was wildly intelligent. He was very successful, and so homelessness can happen to anybody. And I think we all need to keep that in mind because I learned a lot.
Where's Leroy now?
So Leroy is, he passed away in 2021. So we went on a 2-year journey that I definitely changed his life because we had quite a ride in those 2 years. And it's definitely changed my life. And I think it's changed a lot of other people's lives because we social media everything, right? So that day that I bought Leroy coffee, I put it on social media because you share. You tell everybody your stuff. And I do that not to make myself look good, but to share, like, this is what can happen when you do something good for somebody. This is what I learned today. And so that day that I shared it, it just took off and people really connected with his story from all over Canada, all over the U.S., and really connected with him. And so we kind of formed an informal support team, and we had people who connected with me and said, like, I was homeless, or I had an uncle who lived in a car, or I struggled with addictions, you know, and people could really relate to what he went through and to his story. And so the 2 years we had this big community called Team Leroy.
And you mentioned, chess or checkers?
Checkers.
And did he ever get to play or compete at a high level before he passed again?
He didn't play while I knew him. He was he was living on the streets. Like, let's see here. I met him in November, and then COVID started right after that. And so that was a really tough winter weather-wise. And his social worker decided to have him taken off the streets and put in Misericordia Hospital. Shout out to the team there. They were fantastic. And So the 2 years were spent supporting him on the streets, supporting him in Misericordia because he was there for a year. Because of COVID, we couldn't get him into long-term housing right away. And then we did get him into long-term housing, which was fantastic. And do you want the spoiler?
It's your book.
It is, yeah. So, so in June of 2021, we found out that Leroy had an aortic aneurysm connected to his kidney. And it was super treatable. Like it would have been like in and out, easy peasy. Like it was not a big surgery. But Leroy was convinced that the doctors were lying to him and that they wanted to steal his organs. And so he chose not to have treatment. And he wouldn't have anything to do with the doctors of the hospital. He wouldn't go in for anything. And so myself and a couple other gals who are fantastic, we were his end-of-life care. And we supported him in his dying days, and we supported him when he passed away. So, but that he lived for 5 months, and in that 5 months, we were able to give him what he needed was to know that he was valued and respected and seen for him being Leroy Adams, not him being homeless or afflicted with mental illness.
JodyZarn.com if you'd like to read Higher Power Betty and the homeless man who changed Jody's life. Jody, thank you for sharing with us this story. It's been an honor to meet you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.